The Broodlord can kind of be thought as a router, in the same way that your router connects you with the internet. The Broodlord acts as the conduit between a Genestealer cult and the Hive Mind, but it's not necessary. The Broodlord can act independent of the Hive Mind if there's not one in range, and in fact creates something called the Broodmind, and he controls and works out logistics and tells the rest of what the Genestealers what to do. These are purebred or pure strain Genestealers, and when a Genestealer cult or it is going to infect a planet, only the Broodlord is truly needed. The Broodlord is basically the only thing you need to infect and destroy from the inside an entire planet. Genestealers and the Broodlord have something called an Ovipositor on the end of their tongue. It's a kind of a prehensile appendage that they use to give something called the Genestealer's Kiss. And what it does is it implants genetic material inside an unwilling host. There's my Broodlord there. It implants genetic material inside an unwilling host, for the most part. And slowly but surely, the genetic material takes over the host, and that particular person, generally, or animal, or whatever it's infecting, becomes part of the infestation. And it will proceed to reproduce with the local populace because they still can reproduce. So this is the beginning of an infection, and the Broodlord controls everything. Now you can, like going back to the router kind of explanation, you can have a router and no internet connected to it and connect two computers together. This is actually something you can do to try to insulate sensitive data from like being hacked. Is if you just never connect it to the internet, then it can't be accessed from outside the network and there's no problem. And the Broodlord can do that too. He can control his brood in much the same manner. So, interestingly, very interesting to me, there was actually a chapter of Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes, called the Scythes of the Emperor. And they actually came in contact with a Hive Fleet. I want to say Tiamat, but I don't remember. But anyway, a number of them, by their chapter, are known to be infected with these ovipositor parasites, the Genestealer parasites that control them. And apparently, the Adeptus Astartes are able to withstand the influence of these parasites, these Genestealer infections, but they wear the psychic hoods anyway. And I don't know, it would just be super interesting to me if like they came in contact with a true like say hive tendril, and suddenly they become part of a Genestealer infestation. Or maybe even they've been playing the long game this whole time and they've always been part of the infestation and just did a good job hiding it. And, that really would be an interesting scenario to me if all of a sudden, they were out doing something and their true colors start showing and they rebel against the Imperium and they join with the Tyranids. That would be some interesting... I'd like to see some Astartes genetic material inside Tyranids because, I don't know, it'd just be really cool. Anyway, I'm playing against the Bladed Cog Cult here. I chose these guys on purpose to kind of give an idea of what happens. This is a Genestealer only battle that I'm doing. So you'll see me put down things like I have a Gaunt Hive here. It's only needed because I need to tier up to get Genestealer acclimatization too. But anyway, moving back on to the Tyranids. So the first generation Genestealer hybrid that comes out looks more like a Tyranid than whatever species it's infesting. So like if they're going against some of the Imperium, these first generation Genestealer hybrids will have like forearms and claws and talons and crouch and have big gaping hungry maws. And they would never ever pass for a human. But successively, second, third, and fourth generations look more and more like humans. And once you reach the fourth generation of Genestealer hybrid, they look identical to humans. Now, with certain other species like Eldar and Tau, for example, this isn't a problem. They both have different ways to detect Genestealers. I think the Eldar have a psychic way they can tell something's wrong. And I think the Tau, I want to say the Vespids can smell them, but I'm not entirely sure on that. So there have not been any, known infestations of Genestealers that to any magnitude with those races. But humans, for example, are particularly vulnerable to Genestealer cults in the same way that they're vulnerable to Chaos cults. Except with Chaos cults, it's just they start believing in chaos and following chaos and that sort of stuff. But with Genestealers, they actually they have the different hybrids, as well as sometimes they'll attract humans that are trying to make way for the star children to take over. I don't think they realize that this is what they're dealing with when they're talking about star children, but nevertheless, it does happen. So, Genestealers 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth generation looks like a human per se. They can actually infest. Let's go back to the Broodlord here. They're actually sometimes called Leech Masters, Leech something, because when they were first discovered in, I want to say it was called Ymgarl, they were infesting a species that looked like a giant leech, I want to say. So that was their Ymgarl Genestealers were their first, before they were realized that they were actually part of the Tyranid swarm, the Tyranid Hive Mind. Anyway, moving on. Once you reach fourth generation, they look identical to humans. And not only do they look identical, they look like prime humans, like the best humans. They are charismatic, attractive, easily able to use that to their advantage for reproductive purposes, but then also for infiltration purposes. And once you reach this generation, a couple things start happening. They start specializing in different things. And so if you play the tabletop game, there are a couple different things that you can field, which sadly are not part of Tyranids here, but we'll see. There's something called a Patriarch, a Genestealer Patriarch, which the eldest Genestealer, pure strain Genestealer, not the Broodlord, but the eldest pure strain Genestealer becomes the Genestealer Patriarch and kind of helps the Broodlord work in this hive mind. And he ends up becoming an enormous Genestealer, taller than an Astartes, and strong enough to tear an Ogryn apart, at least according to Lexicanum. And, if you kill off this Patriarch, it throws everything into disarray with the cult. But then what happens is the next one starts getting enlarged, and then the next oldest Genestealer takes over as the Patriarch. But you also get the Magos, Primus, and Locus Genestealers. And each one has a different job. The Locus is a guard, a bodyguard, and a guard. They apparently have a lot of similarities to lictors in how they move. I would say they're probably not as specialized as lictors, but on the other hand, they can pass as humans given proper attire and work, even though they have extra limbs and a prehensile tail. They're known to react very quickly to problems neutralizing enemies with a speed and agility that is not present with the local populace. You also have the Primus, which is a war leader, and that could be something like in a battle, he is the leader for sure, but he could also, like, say, be infiltrating the military arm of a government that has a standing army. You also have the Magos, which kind of handles the government from the government side, so he's going to be a charismatic leader that people follow, non-infected individuals, maybe not even part of the cult per se, but they will follow him, and he influences them on a kind of a civic standpoint. So there's that. The other thing that happens in the 4th and 5th generation is you get something called hybrid metamorphs. Hybrid metamorphs look similar to your first generation ones, first generation Genestealer hybrids, but they'll start to have some of the more obvious Tyranid things they're known for. So, for example, they'll have crushing claws on one of their arms as opposed to talons, or a bone sword, or a lash whip. That is, the hallmark of a lot of the Tyranid species like Hive Tyrant. Going on from there. Actually, I think I covered it a lot quicker than I really wanted to. I wanted to talk about this a lot longer, but I didn't. I went too fast. Oh well. These Genestealers here, they're going to come in here and let's see. I got these already, so I think let's look at how we're doing on time. We're about 3/4 of the way through. Being that this is a fairly typical one, if you wanted to leave here and move on, I would not be upset in any way. Your time is valuable, but we'll see what happens here. I'm willing to bet the Genestealers win because they usually do. I think I've talked about everything I wanted to. Well, anyway, spoiler alert: the Genestealers come in, tear up everything. I get this strategic point brought down, and yeah, that was it. This is the color scheme for this is the 4-armed emperor. I like the purple and actually having the Tyranid symbol here. I think that's kind of cool. I think this is Geiger, the Geiger color scheme, which is kind of a very dark gray color scheme. From a gameplay standpoint, acclimatization 1 is big because you can add a couple units to your Broodlord, who is at the very beginning not a great leader, but as he gets his upgrades, he gets a lot better. And so that's why I went with the Gaunty Brood Hive, even though I didn't actually train any Gaunts, is because this takes only 16 influence. And you start with 20, and so as soon as you get 1 influence, you can start acclimatization 1, which is a big upgrade for your Genestealers and your Broodlord. And the next tier, you want to either get the heavy armor or the Scything Talons. I went with the Scything Talons here. They increase the damage a lot, and being able to take down buildings and listing posts much more quickly. And then you can always get the extended carapace later, but then I went and did tier 3, and I got the infiltration, which is infiltration against the AI is kind of like cheating because it just can't handle it very well. It'll do stupid things like it'll know that you're there and you're infiltrated, and it'll just bring a unit over and you'll sit there, and it doesn't do anything to actually detect you, and so your infiltrated units can just attack them and destroy them. So it's not really fair. It's more fair against humans who can react to it appropriately by using a detector. I don't think they even use they have a scanning ability here that they can use. I have a bad habit when fighting Imperial Guard, especially with Tyranids, to try to take down buildings when they're bunkered up and they get their heavy weapons online. and so that's why I was a little shy there with this. And then I think also not the Tactica, but their barracks equivalent, infantry command. That's what it is. Has the plasma that can take them down really quickly too. So we're just kind of mulling around here, making sure there's not anything else we need to take care of. And then we'll take this down. And watch, I have, I think, 2 squads of Genestealers and the Broodlord here. I think that's all it took. And because once you get the acclimatization, their squad cap goes up, and I think they go up to like 11 per squad. And that's just insane. It's a lot strong. I didn't give it enough credit. I started with Genestealers, and then I progressed to Raveners, and then I'm going to Warriors, and now I'm rediscovering Tyranids, the Genestealer portion of Tyranids, and so it's this is such a complicated and interesting game that everything old is new again, and you've got to relearn everything, and it makes you a very complete RTS player if you can get good at Dawn of War. See, I'm just good at Tyranids, and even then, moderately good. But anyway, yep, that's the end. Hope you enjoyed. I don't blame you if you leave. Once I said it was a good idea, I do recommend reading a little bit about the Scythes of the Emperor. They're interesting, and I would like to know more. I bet a fanfic could get really in depth with that and be very interesting. Just because it would be really cool if some Astartes were actually Genestealers. I can't imagine what a hybrid Astartes Genestealer would be. Anyway, thanks.